The order does not arrive loudly. It does not announce itself. It appears in the same format as thousands before it, pressed into standard language, aligned margins, numbered lines. It carries no emphasis beyond what the format already provides. Its authority is implicit. It does not need explanation. It does not need persuasion. It moves because movement is what orders do. It enters the system cleanly. It is logged. It is acknowledged. It is copied precisely, without alteration, without interpretation. Each transfer is recorded. Each handoff is confirmed. Each confirmation is time-stamped. The process does not accelerate or hesitate. It proceeds at the speed required by regulation. The order is read more than once, not because it is unclear, but because repetition is part of compliance. The words are familiar. The structure is familiar. There is nothing unusual in its phrasing, nothing that triggers review, nothing that invites delay. It fits perfectly into the machinery built to receive it. Those who receive it do not react. Reaction is not expected. The order is not evaluated for wisdom or outcome. It is evaluated for completeness. Are the instructions present? Are the conditions specified? Are the signatures valid? The answers are sufficient. The order passes forward. As it moves, it sheds nothing. No doubt attaches to it. No weight is added. It remains exactly what it was when it entered. A directive awaiting execution. The system does not ask where it ends. It only confirms where it must go next. There are pauses, but they are procedural. Time allocated for duplication. Time allocated for acknowledgement. Time allocated for synchronization. These pauses do not interrupt momentum. They structure it. They ensure that when movement resumes, it does so uniformly. The order is spoken aloud in controlled environments. Its language recited without emphasis. It is reduced to essentials. What is required, when it must occur, how it will be recognized as complete. There is no room for interpretation because interpretation is not part of the process. Precision is. Each repetition reinforces certainty. Each confirmation removes distance between instruction and action. The order becomes less an object and more a current, flowing through channels designed to carry it efficiently, without loss, without distortion. Nothing in the system resists it. Resistance would require deviation, and deviation is visible. This order does not provoke visibility. It conforms. It behaves as expected. It passes every checkpoint without comment. By the time it reaches those who will enact it, it no longer feels like a decision. It feels like a condition already in place, something that has always been there, something that cannot be altered because alteration is not a function provided. The order continues forward, intact, unchallenged, irreversible, already too far along to be recalled. The environment that receives the order is built for clarity. Lines are defined. Roles are fixed. Responsibility is segmented so precisely that no single point appears to carry weight beyond its assigned function. Authority flows in one direction. Confirmation flows back the same way. Nothing crosses laterally without permission. The structure does not depend on trust. It depends on verification. Each layer exists to reduce ambiguity, not to generate judgment. The system assumes that correctness originates above, and that execution below is a matter of fidelity. The distinction is not debated. It is institutional. The order descends step by step. At each level, it is transformed only in scale, never in substance. What arrives as a complete directive becomes a series of smaller directives, each perfectly aligned with the original. Language is preserved. Sequence is preserved. Even emphasis is preserved, because emphasis has already been standardized. Those positioned between origin and execution do not consider themselves intermediaries. They are conduits. Their role is to ensure continuity, to confirm that nothing is lost, to ensure that intent remains untouched. They measure success by absence of deviation. The structure rewards this behavior. Promotions are based on reliability. Evaluation is based on adherence. The system does not elevate those who question alignment. It elevates those who maintain it. Over time, this selection process becomes invisible. It feels natural. It feels necessary. Meetings occur, but they are not deliberative. They are synchronizations. Participants speak in procedural language. referencing sections, clauses, timelines. Questions, when asked, are requests for clarification of scope, not purpose. No one asks why the order exists. Why is upstream. Here, only how matters. The chain of command is often described as rigid, but within itself it feels smooth, frictionless. Each component knows its boundaries. There is comfort in this limitation. Personal assessment is not required. Personal responsibility is distributed so thinly that it becomes structural rather than individual. Training reinforces this separation. Scenarios are practiced where incomplete orders are corrected, where unclear orders are returned for clarification. This order does not trigger those responses. It is complete. It is properly formatted. It aligns with doctrine. There is nothing to send back. As the order moves downward, urgency does not increase. Calm is maintained. Calm is a sign of control. The system believes that urgency introduces error. Therefore, even time-sensitive actions are framed as routine. Deadlines are acknowledged without emphasis. Schedules are adjusted without discussion. Those closer to execution receive the order already normalized. It arrives embedded within routine briefings, surrounded by other instructions of lesser consequence. It does not stand out. It is one task among many. Its importance is indicated only by its position in the sequence. No one along the chain feels ownership of the outcome. Ownership is abstract. The structure is designed so that accountability, like authority, is vertical and distant. Each participant can identify exactly who issued the instruction and exactly who will carry it out. Between those points, responsibility dissolves into process. The system prides itself on this clarity, on its ability to function without interruption, on its resistance to individual interpretation. It has been tested repeatedly, refined through past operations, hardened against improvisation. When the order reaches the final layer of command, it is no longer perceived as a choice. It is a state of affairs, a condition that must be satisfied. The structure closes around it, locking it into place, ensuring that nothing, no signal, no observation, no anomaly, can alter its path once execution begins. Execution begins on schedule, not early, not late. Time is observed precisely because precision is a measure of discipline. The order specifies sequence, and the sequence is followed. Each component activates when instructed, neither anticipating nor lagging behind. Synchronization is exact. Deviations would be noticeable. There are none. Preparations occur quietly. Equipment is positioned according to diagrams. Movements are coordinated to avoid overlap. Signals are exchanged in standardized form. Nothing is improvised. The order already accounts for contingencies as defined by doctrine. There is no provision for conditions outside those parameters, and none are sought. Communication follows established channels. Messages are brief, coded, and acknowledged. Each acknowledgement confirms receipt, not comprehension. Comprehension is assumed. The language used leaves no room for interpretation. Verbs are precise. Conditions are binary. Either a step is complete or it is not. Those carrying out the order do not pause to contextualize it. Context exists only insofar as it is referenced within the instruction. External factors are filtered out. Observation is limited to what is required for compliance. Anything beyond that is irrelevant. Movement occurs in phases. Each phase concludes with confirmation before the next begins. These confirmations are routine. They are expected. They are logged. The system relies on this rhythm. It creates the impression of control, of measured progress toward a defined objective. Coordination between units is mechanical. Timelines align. Positions are adjusted within prescribed tolerances. If a minor discrepancy appears, it is corrected locally without escalation, provided it does not alter the sequence. Alteration would require authorization. Authorization would require delay. Delay is not permitted. Silence fills the spaces between actions, not the silence of uncertainty, but the silence of procedure. Voices are low. Movements are economical. There is no visible tension because tension is unnecessary. The order has been vetted. It has passed through every required layer. Confidence is institutional. Checks are performed exactly as outlined. No additional checks are added. To add a check would imply insufficiency in the original instruction. That implication is not acceptable. The checklist is complete. Completion is confirmed. As execution progresses, the order asserts itself as the dominant reality. Everything else adjusts around it. Schedules are reorganized. Resources are allocated. Secondary tasks are deferred. The order dictates priority, and priority dictates behavior. There are moments when environmental conditions diverge slightly from expectation. These deviations are noted but not acted upon. They fall within acceptable margins as defined by regulation. The order does not account for them. Therefore, they are not obstacles. They are variables already absorbed by planning assumptions. The system values continuity over responsiveness. To respond would require reassessment. Reassessment would require authority. Authority resides elsewhere. The current task is execution, not evaluation. Those involved do not feel they are making decisions. Decisions have already been made. Their role is to translate instruction into action. This translation is exact. There is no interpretation, only conversion. As the final steps approach, coordination tightens. Timing becomes critical, but still routine. Signals confirm readiness. All components report status as expected. The system registers success in advance based on compliance metrics rather than outcome. The order is now fully in motion. It exists not as text or instruction, but as action unfolding exactly as prescribed. There is no mechanism remaining to interrupt it, no point where it can be reconsidered. The process has advanced beyond that stage. Execution continues, flawless in form, unquestioned in purpose, carrying the order forward with complete fidelity, toward a result that has not been examined, only obeyed. The first indication is not dramatic. It does not announce itself as a problem. It appears as a minor discrepancy in timing, small enough to be absorbed by the system's tolerances. A report arrives that does not match expectation precisely, but it is close enough to proceed. The order does not instruct pause. The order instructs continuation. As execution advances, additional discrepancies surface. They are consistent, not random. Each one is logged. Each one is categorized. None of them individually justify deviation. Together, they begin to form a pattern, but pattern recognition is not an authorized function at this stage. The system records without interpreting. Communication channels remain active, but their purpose does not change. Information moves upward, stripped of implication. It is formatted to fit predefined fields. Numbers replace descriptions. Status replaces assessment. The order remains intact because nothing reported contradicts it explicitly. There is a moment when alignment requires adjustment. The environment does not behave exactly as assumed. Distances feel longer. Timelines compress unexpectedly. Coordination requires increased effort to maintain sequence. These adjustments are made locally within limits, without altering the core instruction. The system does not slow. It cannot. Momentum has been built deliberately to prevent hesitation. Procedures reinforce forward movement. Each completed step triggers the next automatically. The architecture of execution leaves no space for reconsideration. Warnings exist, but they are subtle. They are embedded in routine language. A delay here, an irregularity there. None of them escalate because escalation requires a threshold that has not been crossed. The thresholds were defined earlier, far upstream, under different assumptions. Those involved sense that outcomes are diverging from projections, but sensing is not actionable. The order does not include contingencies for qualitative judgment. It includes responses only for specified conditions. These conditions are not met. Therefore, no response is authorized. As the operation continues, coordination becomes strained. Synchronization demands precision that the environment no longer supports. Corrections multiply. Each correction is permissible on its own. Collectively, they introduce complexity that the system was not designed to manage in real time. Reports continue to flow upward. They accumulate. They are acknowledged. They do not alter instruction. The chain of command functions as intended, transmitting information without friction, but also without transformation. Meaning does not travel with data. There is no single moment where failure is declared. There is no signal that halts progress. The system does not recognize failure as an event. It recognizes only completion or non-completion. The order has not yet reached its defined endpoint. Therefore, it must continue. Confusion begins to spread at the margins, not as panic but as procedural uncertainty. Units encounter conditions that were not described, but absence of description does not equal prohibition. In the absence of instruction to stop, they proceed. Attempts to reconcile expectation with reality occur quietly. Adjustments are made to preserve alignment with the original sequence. These adjustments do not correct the underlying flaw. They conceal it temporarily. By maintaining the appearance of control, the order's authority remains absolute. Even as its assumptions erode, its language retains power. No one questions its validity because validity was established long before execution began. To question it now would require acknowledgement that the system's earlier certainty was misplaced. As consequences accumulate, they are interpreted as friction, not error. Friction is expected. Error implies origin. Origin implies responsibility. The system is designed to avoid that implication during execution. The operation advances into conditions increasingly incompatible with its design. Resources are consumed faster than anticipated. Timelines slip beyond margins once considered sufficient. These deviations are reported, but the order does not respond. It cannot. It is static. By the time the flaw becomes undeniable, it is no longer identifiable as a flaw within the system's language. It has become the environment in which execution occurs. The order persists, unchanged, moving forward through circumstances it was never meant to survive. The failure does not interrupt the process. It is carried within it, expanding quietly, invisibly, until the distinction between execution and consequence disappears. The system does not recognize collapse as a phase. It has no designation for it. What unfolds is registered instead as a sequence of unresolved deviations, accumulating beyond the capacity of correction. The order continues to assert priority, even as the conditions required for its success dissolve. Coordination begins to fragment. Timelines no longer align cleanly. Synchronization, once maintained through disciplined sequencing, now depends on estimates rather than confirmations. Messages arrive out of order. Acknowledgements lag. The chain remains intact, but tension enters its links. Not emotional tension, but mechanical strain. Resources allocated according to initial assumptions are exhausted sooner than anticipated. Replacement is requested through standard channels. The requests are processed normally. The system responds at its prescribed pace, which is no longer sufficient. Delay compounds delay. No single delay violates protocol. Together, they erode feasibility. Execution persists because cessation is not authorized. Units continue to act in accordance with the order, even as actions lose coherence. Tasks designed to function in concert now operate in isolation, each technically compliant, collectively misaligned. The order's language does not account for this disintegration. It was written for alignment, not fragmentation. Loss becomes evident, but it is registered abstractly. Numbers replace presence. Status codes replace context. The scale grows, but scale alone does not trigger termination. The order does not define a threshold where consequence outweighs compliance. It defines only completion. Attempts to restore order intensify. Procedures meant for stability are applied repeatedly, even as their effectiveness diminishes. Redundancy increases. Verification multiplies. These measures preserve the appearance of control while accelerating depletion. The structure begins to cannibalize itself. Support functions divert resources to sustain forward movement, leaving secondary systems unsupported. The imbalance spreads. Each correction creates a new deficiency elsewhere. The system responds by correcting again, following the same logic that produced the imbalance. Communication grows dense but empty. Reports flood upward, each meticulously formatted, each insufficient. Decision-making remains centralized and distant. By the time information reaches a level where alteration could occur, it is no longer actionable. It describes conditions that have already shifted. There is no dramatic reversal, no sudden realization. Collapse is gradual, procedural, almost methodical. The order is followed to its logical end, even as that end ceases to resemble its intended outcome. At the point where continuation yields only loss, the system still does not stop. Stopping would require an order of equal authority. None arrives. Silence from above is interpreted as confirmation. Absence of instruction becomes instruction itself. Eventually, execution reaches a state where tasks can no longer be completed as defined. Objectives remain unmet, but processes continue. Activity persists without progress. The distinction between action and futility blurs. The collapse is complete when compliance itself produces nothing but further degradation. When adherence no longer advances the order, but abandoning it remains unauthorized. The system has no mechanism to resolve this condition. What remains is not chaos but exhaustion, not defiance but depletion. The order, once precise and commanding, now exists only as a directive that has consumed everything capable of carrying it forward. And still, within the structure, it is recorded as executed. The period that follows does not begin with acknowledgement. There is no formal declaration that the order failed. The system does not require such declarations to continue functioning. Activity shifts gradually to adjacent tasks. Schedules are rewritten. Resources are reassigned. The structure adapts without addressing the cause. Documentation accumulates. Reports are compiled, reviewed, archived. Language becomes neutral, precise, detached. Events are described in terms of deviation, delay, and loss of efficiency. The order itself is referenced only by designation, stripped of narrative. It is treated as a completed action, not a subject of inquiry. Reviews occur, but they are procedural. They focus on compliance metrics, response times, logistical throughput. The order is evaluated for execution, not for conception. Findings are distributed across departments, diluted into recommendations that adjust margins rather than assumptions. No individual is identified as responsible. Authority remains intact because it was never exercised visibly. Decisions were embedded in structure, not attributed to actors. The system absorbs consequence by dispersing it across layers until it becomes statistical rather than personal. Those who carried out the order return to routine. New directives arrive. They are processed in the same format, through the same channels. Familiar language restores familiarity. The previous operation recedes into institutional memory, reduced to reference numbers and footnotes. Training materials are updated subtly. Thresholds are adjusted. Contingencies are expanded slightly. These changes are not presented as corrections, but as refinements. The underlying logic of command remains unchanged. Obedience continues to be rewarded. Fidelity remains the measure of competence. The order is no longer discussed openly. Its name does not appear in briefings. It survives only in archives, accessible but unused. Silence settles around it, not because it is forbidden, but because it is unnecessary. The system has moved on. Life within the structure resumes its rhythm. Orders continue to move downward. Confirmations continue to move upward. The machinery operates as designed, uninterrupted by reflection. The failure is contained not by explanation, but by omission. It becomes indistinguishable from countless other operations that did not achieve their intended effect. Its uniqueness dissolves into volume. At no point is the question asked whether the order should have been stopped. The system doesn't recognize such questions as operational. It recognizes only execution and closure. In time, a new order will travel the same paths, through the same layers, with the same certainty. It will be received, processed, and carried forward without resistance. And if it too travels too far to stop, the structure will remain ready to receive the next one.